At the World Economic Forum in Davos, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky expressed concerns on the effectiveness of sanctions against Russia. Europe must continue empowering Ukraine resistance with or without the support of Hungary, President von der Leyen said in Davos. Officials at the World Economic Forum say the Red Sea's crisis is posing a new risk for Europe.
The Polish Law and Justice opposition party disrupts parliamentary proceedings to demand the release of 2 jailed members. Romanian farmers and truck drivers continue to protest after talks with the government fail to reach an agreement.
At the World Economic Forum in Davos, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky expressed concerns on the effectiveness of sanctions against Russia. The current measures fail to impede Russian missile production, he said, as key components from Western countries are still being used by Moscow. President Zelensky also emphasized on the need for global sanctions on Russia's nuclear industry, as he considers President Putin's hostage-taking of a nuclear power plant as an act of terrorism.
Can freezing the war in Ukraine be its end? I don't want to settle for the truism that any frozen conflict will eventually reignite. And I remind you that after 2014, there were attempts to freeze the war in Donbass. There were very influential guarantors of those processes that then Chancellor of Germany and the presidents of France, but Putin is a predator who is not satisfied with the frozen products.
2024 must be a decisive year for Ukraine and Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. This is what the President Volodymyr Zelensky said here at the World Economic Forum annual meeting in Davos. He said that every time in the past when Ukraine asked for more weapons, more sanctions, more support and more measures against Russia, Ukraine was told not to escalate. But in fact, he said that escalation would have taught Russia a lot. He also said that none of Moscow's threats came through. Each came out as bluff. Now, Volodymyr Zelensky here in Davos is having a number of meetings, but his main message here is for the world to put an end with just and stable peace to the war in Ukraine. And he is inviting the allies to be part of this. Sasha Vakulina from Davos for Euronews.
Europe must continue empowering Ukraine resistance with or without the support of Hungary. That was the message of the President of the European Commission in Davos, where she met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Yet, financing is urgently needed, and Hungary is still blocking 50 billion euros in long-term assistance to Kyiv. Talking to Euronews, Ursula von der Leyen said she still hopes the 27 member states can find common ground.
Ukraine needs that, but it's currently being held up due to a member of the European Union. How do you solve a problem like Viktor Orban, and how does Zelensky feel about being caught up in political squabbling?
I think it's very important to engage with all 27 member states of the European Union to get the 50 billion euro for 4 years for Ukraine up and running. And this is the phase we're in right now. It's the preparation for the extraordinary European Council on the 1st of February. It's hard work. We have discussed many different issues. For me, it's very important, and my personal priority is to have an agreement by 27. If this is not possible, we are prepared for an agreement by 26, but I strongly support and prefer an agreement by 27.
Also in Davos, President von der Leyen met with Li Qiang, Premier of the People's Republic of China, where they discussed the growing trade imbalances. The bloc currently has a nearly 400 billion trade deficit with China.
With the Chinese leadership, I have discussed the trade issues of the European Union and basically the principle of de-risk, not decouple. Not decouple is very clear. It's neither reasonable nor feasible. And there are topics where we cooperate, like fighting climate change. But we're very clear and frank on the trade imbalances we have with China, and that the Chinese leadership has to do something about it. These were details we discussed, and it's good to have a very frank and open discussion.
During her speech in Davos, the president of the European Commission also said that an era has started where conflict and confrontation are overlapping. She described it as the greatest risk to the global order in the post-war era.
They need a sustained supply of weapons to defend Ukraine and regain
the business case for EU enlargement. This was the issue discussed by an Euronews discussion panel at the World Economic Forum. Several countries are on the waiting list to join the bloc, but they must overcome many obstacles. Our guest talked to Euronews' Sasha Vakulina about corruption, globalization, and the challenge to expansion from authoritarian regimes.
If you'd like to attract investment, we need to connect rule of law, anti-corruption, independence of the judicial system. We need to talk about this. I think that we should now stick to this as heart of the European project. Those countries have to show their wish really to respect this, because that means predictability, certainty. We can build confidence.
What we've seen over the last year is that globalization is moving in the wrong direction, and free trade is becoming a scarce resource. And now we see a chance to expand the home territory. What is EU? What all European-based companies are depending upon, then I think it's really a pity not to take that chance.
But unfortunately, quite nearby, we have the regimes who really want to test and challenge the existing world order. Those countries, like Russia, like Iran, like North Korea, and maybe some others, they are thinking literally like that. So it's a time to take the bold and strong decisions, and EU expansion, we believe, is one of them, which really can stop and preserve the normal development of the world.
Could you please raise
Euronews is broadcasting several key events and high-level interviews over the course of the week at the World Economic Forum in Davos. The specter of inflation continues to trouble Europe's economy, even if the battle is gradually wearing down. That's a common theme among leaders at the World Economic Forum. In an interview with Euronews, a top official with the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development said the Red Sea's crisis is posing a new risk.
The core inflation remains substantial, and everybody understands that fighting core inflation is a lengthy and more painful process. Moreover, the war in the Middle East, and in particular disruptions to shipping, mean that there's always a danger of increase in energy prices that would fuel inflation.
A potential trade conflict between China and the US could also have a negative impact on Europe's climate goals, Javorczyk believes.
My fear is that escalating trade tensions may lead to new restrictions of exports of critical raw materials, and therefore may jeopardize green transition.
The Polish opposition party disrupted parliamentary proceedings on Tuesday, calling for the immediate release of two former government officials, Mariusz Kamiński and Maciej Wasik. Last week, the two MPs were arrested at the presidential palace after a Warsaw court sentenced them to 2 years behind bars for abuse of power for actions taken in 2007. The Polish president, Andrzej Duda, initially pardoned them in 2015 for the same crimes. However, legal experts have questioned the validity of the act. Duda announced last Thursday he had launched a new process to pardon them again. Farmers and lorry drivers continue to protest in Romania. On Monday night, the access to the ports of Constanța and Brasov were blocked, while dozens of trucks once again interrupted road traffic. Earlier in the day, government and farmers' associations met for talks. Hours later, the Romanian Minister of Agriculture said most of the demands had been met, a claim denied by the protesters.
Acest strigăt de disperare al nostru nu se referă doar la agricultură și la transporturi. Sunt măsuri pe care le cerem pentru protecția afacerilor noastre, pentru protecția societății civile, pentru protecția noastră ca români.
Farmers are demanding faster subsidy payments, compensation for losses caused by imports from neighboring Ukraine, and more state aid for fuel costs, amongst other demands. Truck drivers are calling for lower tax and insurance rates and have complained about lengthy waiting times at the borders.
As Spanish cities grapple with the invasion of electric scooters, Valencia has become the first region to introduce a traffic law to control them. From now on, electric scooters will have to be registered and display a license plate. In addition, they will be limited to a speed of 25 kilometers per hour, and users will require a mandatory insurance that costs between 20 and 90 euros per year. Those failing to comply with the new rules could face fines ranging between 100 and 1,000 euros.
Jose Mourinho is leaving AS Roma with immediate effect. After its 3-1 loss against Milan on Sunday, the club now risks missing the Champions League for a 6th straight season. Mourinho was in his 3rd season at Roma. He led the club to the UEFA Conference League title in his 1st season and the European League finals last year, but his behaviour towards referees has often been controversial. He was suspended from the Milan game this weekend due to his protests. Former Roma captain Daniele De Rossi and Antonio Conte are possible contenders to take over.
Argentinian star Lionel Messi has become the first footballer to be named FIFA Men's Player of the Year for the 3rd time. Unable to attend the ceremony in London, his award was accepted on his behalf by the event's co-host Thierry Henry. Spain's World Cup winner Aitana Bonmatí took the award for Best Women's Player, while England boss Serena Wichmann won the Best Women's Coach for the 2nd successive year and a 4th time. And Manchester United's Mary Earps collected Best Women's Goalkeeper award.